Masculine presence under pressure. Pressure does not create the man. Pressure reveals the man. A man's presence is easy to admire when life is smooth. When the room is calm, the plan is working, the body is rested, and respect is flowing. That is not the real test. The real test comes when the timeline tightens, emotions rise, uncertainty spreads, and the room begins to lose shape. This video is about that moment. It is about a man's ability to stay steady when conditions are not steady. To remain measured when others speed up. To keep clarity when the room gets emotional. To absorb pressure without becoming pressure. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Objective judgment, now, at this very moment. Unselfish action, now, at this very moment. Willing acceptance, now, at this very moment, of all external events. That's all you need." Stoic Apex translation. Under pressure, reduce the moment to 3 things. See clearly. Act cleanly. Accept what is outside your control without collapse. That is masculine presence under pressure. Not noise. Not speed. Not domination. Presence. Many men can perform strength when life cooperates. Far fewer can hold command when the environment turns hostile. Far fewer can lead after disrespect, failure, tension, fatigue, or uncertainty. That is why this matters. If your state depends on favorable conditions, then your strength is rented, not owned. If your presence disappears when pressure arrives, then pressure still rules you. We are building a higher standard. Disciplined perception, non-reactive physiology, ordered speech, grounded authority, emotional containment, and leadership under load. Marcus Aurelius also wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Stoic Apex translation. Pressure is not separate from the path. Pressure is the path. The thing testing your presence is also building it. If this work is for you, subscribe, stay through the episode, and comment with the arena that tests you most. Work, marriage, leadership, money, family, or your own mind. Pressure reveals what training concealed. One of the biggest lies a man tells himself is this: "I am calm because I feel calm right now." No. You are calm when calm remains available under load. Pressure is diagnostic. It reveals whether your discipline is real or cosmetic. It shows whether your composure is embodied or merely verbal. It exposes whether your standards live in your nervous system or only in your ideals. Pressure reveals the truth. At work, it shows whether you can separate signal from noise. In marriage, it shows whether your steadiness is protective or performative. In leadership, it shows whether your authority comes from order or from the need to dominate. In solitude, it shows whether your confidence was built on purpose or on comfort. So stop asking, "How do I avoid pressure?" Start asking, "Who do I become inside pressure?" That is the stronger question. The problem is not intensity. The problem is that many men have not trained their physiology to stay in attention, and their speech to stay ordered when intensity arrives. So the first correction is simple. Stop treating pressure as an interruption to your development. Treat it as exposure. It shows you exactly where your frame is still weak. When the room gets loud, what happens to your breathing? When someone disrespects you, what happens to your tone? When outcomes feel uncertain, what happens to your pace? When work tightens, what happens to your clarity? Those answers reveal your actual level. And that is not an insult. It is useful. Masculine presence begins there, not with pretending, but with seeing. Presence is physiological before it is verbal. Most men try to solve pressure at the level of wording. They want a better sentence, a better comeback, a better explanation. But under real pressure, language is downstream from physiology. Your body speaks before your mouth does. The room can feel your nervous system before it fully processes your argument. Your wife can feel whether you are grounded before she evaluates your logic. Your team can feel whether you are steady before it trusts your direction. That is why masculine presence under pressure is first a physiological discipline. If your breathing is shallow, your mind narrows. If your jaw is tight, your voice hardens. If your shoulders rise, your body signals threat. If your pulse accelerates, your speech tends toward speed, defense, and distortion. Then even a valid point arrives contaminated. This is why many men are technically correct and still ineffective. They say the boundary, but the body carries anger. They ask the question, but the body carries accusation. They offer leadership, but the body carries insecurity. So before strategy, you need a pressure sequence. Slow the exhale. Lower the shoulders. Release the jaw. Feel your feet. Reduce unnecessary words. Buy one clean beat of silence before speaking. That beat matters. That beat stops chemistry from hijacking leadership. That beat reminds you that urgency is not authority. That beat keeps another person's dysregulation from becoming your operating system. A regulated man is different. He is harder to rush, harder to distort, and harder to move off principle. That is why presence is power. Not because it is theatrical. Because it transmits order. If you want better pressure performance, do not begin with phrasing. Begin with regulation. Because the body you bring into the moment becomes the room you create around you. The difference between force and presence. Under pressure, weak men try to create control through force. They get louder, sharper, faster, more repetitive, more emotionally loaded. They believe intensity equals authority. It does not. Intensity without regulation usually signals fragility, not power. Presence is different from force. Force tries to overpower the room. Presence stabilizes the room. Force needs immediate compliance. Presence can tolerate process. Force reacts to disrespect with ego. Presence responds with measured consequence. Force wants to win the moment. Presence wants to lead the moment. This distinction changes everything. In marriage, force says, "Why are you doing this again?" Presence says, "This conversation is getting unclean. We will continue when respect returns." At work, force says, "I need answers right now." Presence says, "Here is what we know, what we do not know, and the next move." In leadership, force blames, flares, and pressures people into reaction. Presence creates clarity, ownership, sequence, and movement. The reason many men default to force is simple: they mistake pressure for a threat to identity. The moment tension rises, deeper fears surface. Will I be respected? Will I lose control? Will I look weak? Will I fail publicly? Then instead of leading the circumstance, they defend self-image. And once that happens, presence disappears. That is why real masculine presence requires ego sobriety. You cannot lead pressure if your identity depends on instant validation. You cannot lead a woman through emotion if you are desperate to be seen as right. You cannot lead a team through uncertainty if your first need is to avoid looking imperfect. If this episode is already naming something you have felt but not fully explained, subscribe, stay with the series, and comment. Pressure reveals. Do not catch the room's nervous system. One of the biggest pressure mistakes a man can make is emotional contagion. Someone enters hot, scattered, disrespectful, anxious, or chaotic, and instead of stabilizing the environment, he absorbs the state and reflects it back. That is not leadership. That is capture. Epictetus taught, it isn't events themselves that disturb people, but only their judgments about them. Stoic Apex translation: pressure in the room may be real, but your collapse into it is still an issue of inner governance. The event is external. Your adoption of its chaos is internal. This is where masculine presence becomes visible. A grounded man does not pretend the room is calm. He simply refuses to let another person's dysregulation become his operating system. He sees the energy, names reality, and stays slower than the moment. At work, that means a team can be anxious without you becoming frantic. In marriage, it means your partner can be emotional without you becoming defensive or punishing. In leadership, it means bad news can arrive without your tone becoming a threat. The man with presence does not mirror chaos. He contains it. That containment is not suppression. It is discipline, non-adoption. You are not acting numb. You are refusing infection. Internally, you are saying, I will deal with the facts, but I will not inherit the distortion. This changes behavior immediately. You stop matching volume with volume. You stop letting accusation dictate your speed. You stop treating another person's urgency as a command. Ask yourself, when the room gets unstable, do people borrow steadiness from you? Or do you borrow instability from them? That question reveals whether your presence is real. Pressure punishes excess words. Under pressure, weak men usually increase their words. They explain more, defend more, justify more, promise more, repeat more, and leak more. They think more language will restore control. Usually it reveals the opposite. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Let your principles be brief and basic." Stoic Apex translation. When pressure rises, reduce complexity. Say less, mean more, and let order carry the message. Masculine presence under pressure sounds different. It is concise without being cold. Clear without being theatrical. It does not over-negotiate reality or plead for emotional permission. At work, that might sound like, here is the issue. Here is the cause. Here is the correction. Here is the timeline. In conflict, this is not productive right now. I'll continue when we are both clean. In leadership, that path is closed. Here is the next move. The principle is simple. The more emotionally loaded the room becomes, the more disciplined your language must become. Not emptier. Cleaner. Men without presence try to dominate the moment with quantity. Men with presence shape the moment with sequence, pacing, and verbal economy. When pressure rises, do not ask, how do I say more? Ask, what is the cleanest true sentence available right now? That is the sentence closest to power. The pressure standard in work, marriage, and leadership. Masculine presence under pressure is not one skill. It is one standard expressed across multiple domains. At work, presence means your clarity outlives the deadline. You do not let urgency deform your thinking. You do not outsource your nervous system to the loudest voice in the room. You create sequence where others create a scramble. In marriage, presence means your steadiness remains available during emotional weather. You do not disappear into withdrawal. You do not dominate to escape vulnerability. You do not beg for instant resolution because discomfort arrived. In leadership, presence means others feel order around you when outcomes are unclear. Your calm becomes usable to them. Your pacing becomes stabilizing. Your speech becomes orienting. This is why pressure presence earns respect. Not because it is flashy. Because it is reliable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you do the job in a principled way, with diligence, energy and patience, if you keep yourself free of distractions and keep the spirit inside you undamaged, then your life will be happy. Stoic Apex translation. Do the work cleanly, stay inwardly intact. And do not let pressure corrupt the instrument you're using to lead. That phrase matters, keep the spirit inside you undamaged. Under pressure, many men finish the task but damage themselves in the process. They hit the deadline but destroy the room. They make the point but lose the relationship. They win the exchange but lose self-respect. That is not mastery. That is expensive survival. That is masculine presence. If this section hit home, comment, do not catch the room. Pressure exposes the ego you thought you had mastered. Pressure does not only test skill. It tests identity. A man can appear composed while life is cooperating. He can look patient when affirmed, disciplined when respected, confident when outcomes are going his way. But pressure uncovers the ego structures that comfort kept hidden. Suddenly, he is not only managing a problem. He is confronting the parts of himself that still need approval, control, reassurance, and image protection. This is why pressure feels personal. It does not merely threaten the plan. It threatens the story a man is telling about himself. If the project fails, what does that mean about me? If she pulls away, what does that mean about me? If I am misunderstood, what does that mean about me? If I do not have the answer immediately, what does that mean about me? That is where ego enters the room. Epictetus taught, don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well. Stoic Apex translation. Pressure becomes suffering when your ego insists reality must obey your preferred script in order for you to remain stable. That line cuts deep because many men do not actually want reality. They want reassurance. They want confirmation. They want the moment to prove they are still in control. When that proof is withheld, the nervous system starts grasping. Then the man who should be solving the problem starts defending himself. He explains too much because he wants to be seen correctly. He presses too hard because he wants certainty now. He overreacts because he wants to preserve status. He cannot let silence breathe because silence feels such as loss. That is why ego sobriety matters under pressure. A sober man can admit, what is making this hard? It is also my attachment to what this circumstance is making me feel about myself. That recognition is power. Because once you see the ego load, you can stop feeding it. You can return to cleaner questions. What is true here? What actually matters here? What response preserves order? What action is aligned with my standard? What outcome is outside my control? Those questions pull you back into reality. They help you stop confusing discomfort with danger and uncertainty with identity death. The man with masculine presence under pressure is not a man without ego. He is a man who does not let ego drive the vehicle when the road gets narrow. Because under pressure, ego wants intensity. Presence wants clarity. Ego wants defense. Presence wants precision. Ego wants instant restoration of image. Presence wants alignment with truth. Ask yourself, when you are pressured, what are you actually protecting? The mission, the relationship, the principle, or your self-image? Your answer reveals where your real work still lives. Calm is not weakness. It is controlled power. Many men still fear that calmness under pressure will make them look soft. So when challenged, they add extra hardness to prove they are not weak. They sharpen the face, harden the tone, accelerate the pace, and push more force into the room than the moment requires. This usually backfires. Because uncontrolled hardness does not communicate power. It communicates insecurity under threat. Real calm is different. Calm is not retreat. Calm is a retained force under discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Stoic Apex translation. The deepest power under pressure is not the power to control the room. It is the power to control what the room awakens in you. That kind of calm is dangerous in the best sense. It makes you difficult to bait, difficult to rush, difficult to shame, and difficult to destabilize. It keeps perception sharp and speech clean. It lets you act without borrowing energy from chaos. That is why calm men are often underestimated by emotional people. They mistake non-reactivity for passivity because they are used to reading intensity as power. But over time the deeper truth appears. The calm man sees better, chooses better, and holds consequences better. In marriage, his calm feels safer. In leadership, his calm feels stronger. In conflict, his calm feels more expensive to challenge. In work, his calm feels more senior than his title. The key is that this calm is not limp. It still has boundaries, discernment, and consequences. It simply does not need agitation to prove seriousness. That is the masculine shift. Not from softness to aggression, but from reactivity to governed force. Ask yourself, is your intensity serving your leadership, or compensating for the parts of you that still fear irrelevance, rejection, and loss of control? Because calm without backbone is weak. But backbone without calm is unstable. The standard is both. Composed and consequential. If this section landed, comment, calm is controlled power. Train pressure before pressure arrives. Masculine presence under pressure is not built in crisis. It is revealed there. It is built beforehand, through daily disciplines that make steadiness available when life turns sharp. If you wait for pressure to arrive before practicing regulation, clarity, and restraint, you will usually default to your weakest conditioning. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Objective judgment, now, at this very moment. Unselfish action, now, at this very moment. Willing acceptance, now, at this very moment. Of all external events. That's all you need." Stoic Apex translation. Train 3 things every day before the heat comes. See clearly. Act cleanly. Accept what you cannot control without dramatizing it. That means daily work in ordinary moments. Slower breathing when irritated. Cleaner speech when rushed. Less explanation when insecure. More structure when overloaded. More honesty when ego wants image management. A man becomes pressure capable by practicing order in low stakes moments, until order becomes more natural in high stakes moments. This is not glamorous. It is repetition. It is maturity. It is masculine craftsmanship. Ask yourself, what are you rehearsing each day? Panic or sequence? Speed or steadiness? Emotional leakage or governed force? Because whatever you practice in private tends to appear in public when consequences rise. When you fail the test, recover with honor. Every man fails pressure tests. You will say too much. You will answer too fast. You will leak frustration. You will let ego enter the exchange. You will discover again that your current level is lower than your ideal. The question is not whether failure happens. The question is what kind of man appears after failure. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Stoic Apex translation. When you fail the pressure test, do not compound the damage with denial, pride, or self-deception. Name what was unclean. Correct what was untrue. Repair what was yours. Then return to standard. A weak man either collapses into shame or hides inside justification. A stronger man does neither. He reviews the moment honestly. He sees where he sped up, where he tried to prove, where he lost tone, where he abandoned sequence. Then he repairs with dignity. No groveling. No fake invulnerability. No mythology. Just truth, correction, and renewed command. In relationships, that may sound such as, "My tone was off. That part is mine. I'll correct it." At work, "I reacted too quickly. Here is the cleaner version." In leadership, "The decision was right, but the delivery was not. I'll tighten it." Ask yourself, when you fail, do you become smaller and defensive, or more honest and more exact? Recovery is part of masculine presence too. The final standard, be the man people feel before you speak. Masculine presence under pressure ultimately becomes visible before language arrives. People feel whether you are rushed. They feel whether you are tight. They feel whether you are proving. They feel whether you are hunting control. They feel whether your calm is real. They feel whether your authority is grounded or theatrical. That is why this final standard matters. Become the man others feel before you speak. Not because you are performing dominance. Because your nervous system has become a place of order. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Stoic Apex translation. Do not merely admire masculine presence under pressure. Become pressure capable in the body, in the voice, in the pace, in the standard, in life, and in your nervous system's recovery. Let people encounter your steadiness as reality, not branding. That means when tension rises, you breathe before speaking. When the room speeds up, you preserve sequence. When conflict appears, you hold shape without escalation. When you fail, you recover with honor. When uncertainty stretches out, you do not contaminate the process with desperation. When leadership is needed, you move without borrowing force from chaos. And when others lose themselves, you remain available to yourself. That is the standard. Not perfection. Not coldness. Not invulnerability. Presence. A man who can hold presence under pressure becomes unusually trustworthy. He becomes safer in love, stronger in leadership, cleaner in speech, steadier in work, and more sovereign in solitude. So here is the question. When pressure comes, do people meet your fear, your ego, and your urgency? Or do they meet your steadiness, your clarity, and your command? Build until the answer changes. If this episode gave language to the man you are becoming, subscribe, stay with Stoic Apex, and comment, presence under pressure. And send this video to one man who needs more calm, more frame, and more order under load. Stoic Apex.